So let's say it's your birthday and you go out with friends and you go and party like it's your birthday, and you have a lot of drinks and you end up driving home and you know that you are intoxicated. So you make a bad judgment call, but on your way home, you end up getting pulled over by the police, and now they're asking you to take a breathalyzer because there's an odor of alcohol smelling from your vehicle. What do you do? Do you take the breathalyzer or do you refuse the breathalyzer? So I am criminal defense attorney Hannah Akintoye, and if you've ever been pulled over for a DUI, you know that the question that you're going to have to grapple with is whether or not you should take a breathalyzer. Now, one thing that I'll tell you is that this information is really important because in most situations, you are not going to be entitled to an attorney when asked the question whether or not you should take a breathalyzer. So you want to know this information ahead of time in case you're ever in these circumstances. Now, there are a couple of considerations that you are going to want to keep in mind when deciding whether or not you should take a breathalyzer. The first thing that you must know is that if you refuse a breathalyzer, your license is going to be suspended. There's usually no way around it, and this usually applies across the nation. In the United States, there is no constitutional right to be granted a driver's license, and so driving in the United States is a privilege. Usually, when you sign up to obtain your driver's license, what typically happens is that there are implied consent laws that you agree to. And essentially what that means is that if an officer ever stops you and suspects you of being under the influence of a DUI, it is implied that you consent to a breathalyzer if you're granted a license in the United States. And so if you've ever heard that term implied consent laws, that is what that means. At the end of the day, nobody can really force you to take a breathalyzer, but if you refuse it, there will be consequences. The second question that you want to ask yourself is, how drunk are you? Right? Ask yourself, how drunk am I? Because that will determine whether or not you should take the breathalyzer. If you take the breathalyzer and you blow a blood alcohol score that is completely out of this world, and I mean something that is extremely high, you could be looking at a mandatory minimum period of incarceration just because you were so severely intoxicated and you decided that you wanted to get behind the wheel of a vehicle. But on the other side, if you take a breathalyzer and you are extremely below the legal limit, then that gives you an argument to make in court that you were not intoxicated. But when I say below the legal limit, most of the time people don't know what that is or what that means in the particular state that they're located. So the one thing that you're going to want to take into consideration is how much you really had to drink. Did you have wine? Did you have hard liquor? Did you have beer? What did you have to drink? And then what is your body mass, right? How much do you weigh? How tall are you? And how would that reasonably have affected your system? Did you drink on an empty stomach or not? Those are things that you want to take into consideration. It doesn't matter whether or not your body is tolerant of alcohol because you consume it a lot. So what really matters is what will be measured in your system. So keep in mind that if you refuse a breathalyzer and your license is suspended, you want to weigh your consequences. Is it better that your license is suspended as opposed to you facing a mandatory minimum period of jail time? Or is it better that you have an argument for your DUI case by taking the breathalyzer because you know that you only had a limited amount of alcohol, you just had a couple sips of beer, or you didn't even have any hard liquor? All of those things should be considered when deciding whether or not to take a breathalyzer. There is no real right or wrong answer to this question. It really does depend. Just because you have a right to refuse something doesn't mean you should. If it's going to help you, then don't enforce that right. But if you feel like it's going to hurt you, then refuse the breathalyzer, so at least you're not helping the officer or the prosecutors prosecute you on a DUI charge. So I hope that information is helpful to you, and I hope that you never run into these circumstances. But if you do, at least you know what to consider when deciding whether or not you should refuse a breathalyzer. As always, you guys stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Always feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, either here or on my website, mydclaw.com, and I'm always happy to chat with you further. Take care.